Yesterday I spoke about the state of governments before the time of Imam al-Mahdi and before the coming of the Imam, and what the state of these governments will look like. We talked about how people will be ruled by tyranny, people will be ruled by oppression, and how governments will overbear in their lives and create a system of injustice. Today we'll look at something a little bit more personal and a little bit more disturbing and upsetting as well when it comes to the time period before the coming of Imam Sahib al-Zaman. And this will be the religious and moral condition of people in general before the time of the Imam. From the hadith that we have and from the narrations that we have, what we can see is that during the last days and the last time period before the coming of Imam al-Mahdi, Islam as a religion and the Holy Quran and all of its teachings will remain only in name, and Muslims will only be Muslims superficially and by name. What this means is that they won't hold on to anything which Islam teaches except holding the name of Muslims by declaring themselves as Muslims without following through on any of the religious practices. What we also see is that the mosques are unfortunately not going to be in that time period centres for guidance and for helping people reach their spiritual goals. The fuqaha at that time will be among the worst jurists that this earth has ever seen, the most corrupt. And religion, as we mentioned, as a whole, will be nothing more than a word which people will trade with no care. Islam will be nothing more than empty words, empty deeds, and there will be no meaning behind any of the actions, and in fact the actions themselves will even be left behind. As we know, Islam, the word Islam, and the definition of being a Muslim means complete and entire submission towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to His will and to all of His orders as well. And we know that Islam is the most superior and the best religion, which ensures the completeness of mankind, ensures the completeness of a human being. It not only completes man in this world, but also in the after world as well. However, what is important and what is valuable is the implementation of the rules and the laws of Islam and the Quran in a society for Islam to have this impact on a person. But at the end of time, before the Imam comes, everything will be the very opposite of this. In other words, nothing more of Islam will be left except its name. Nothing more, none of the actions, none of the rules, none of the laws. The Quran will be present in society, but nothing will remain of it except the words which are written on its pages. People will see the words that are written in the Holy Quran and they won't follow through on it. They will just take it as words with no action or consequence. Muslims, as we mentioned, will only be Muslims in name, and there will be no resemblance of the religion of Islam in their hearts. They won't hold sins as heavy burdens which they shouldn't commit. They won't hold good deeds as something which they should strive in doing. They won't seek to go and forbid the evil and the haram, and they won't seek to enjoy what is good. And the Holy Prophet has said in this regard that a period is going to pass, and a period is going to come for my ummah in which there will be nothing left of Islam but its name, and there will be no trace of the Quran except in its form and its outline, and the Muslims will be called Muslims in name, but all of the people that declare themselves to be Muslims will be the most alien to Islam. It will come to the time period where people who proudly come and call themselves Muslims will be the furthest away from Islam out of anybody else in the society. And further to this, Imam Sadiq says that a time will soon come to pass when the people will not recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will not understand the true meaning of Tawheed. And at such a time when the people are in this state of affairs, this is the time period which the Dajjal will come and he will appear. As we know, alhamdulillah, the mosque is the place for worship. It is the place for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It is the place for religious preaching. It is the place for guiding people and enlightening them and giving them hope and spirituality. And during the early period of Islam, what you can see is that the mosques were used by the Holy Prophet, by the Imams, by the companions. The mosques were used for important administrative work and taking care of the community and taking care of the society. And this continues up until today. If you look, for example, into Iran, prior to 1979, the mosques were used by not just the ulama, not just the religious people, but by the society as a whole. As we know, the entire Iranian population was being oppressed by the evil Shah at the time, the evil ruler. And we found that people, in order to try and get rid of this oppression, get rid of this tyranny, they would go and find the most beneficial place for them to do so in the mosques. It wasn't possible for them to go out into the streets and to protest against the government. It wasn't possible for them to go into a government building and speak to politicians and try and get a change. No, every avenue for them to go and protest had been shut off. So the place that they would come and they would congregate and they would try to create a change in the community and in the country would be in the masjids and in the Husayniyas. Specifically, it would be in the mosques of the Shias especially. Why? Because those were the mosques that had the spirit and the nature of revolutionary Islam within them, going back all the time from Rasulullah, especially during the time period of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And these Shia mosques specifically, and the scholars and the ulama who were present in them, were the only place and the only forums in which the Iranian citizens at that time could speak freely and they could plan how to get rid of the oppression which was taking place, specifically the oppression against the Shia. And the historians and Western academics who live in this country, who live in Britain, who live in America, they looked at that situation that was happening at the time. They saw that the Shah was oppressing innocent people, especially the religious Shias, especially those who were wearers of the hijab and who took hijab as an important concept. The historians looked at that time period and they said that the scholars and the ulama used the mosques as the headquarters for all of the revolutionary committees. They used the mosque as distribution centers for food, for water, for other essential goods, and they used the mosques as centers for mobilization against the evil ruler and the unjust ruler at the time. So we can see, if we look then into history, that even people who were not religious, even people who did not call themselves Muslims and were not proud of having a faith, they would come and they would use the mosques. They found their peace, they found the spirit of revolutionary change and hope inside the mosques. But during the end of times, when we get closer and once everything in this world disintegrates so that there is nothing left of its moral fibre, the time period just before the awaited Imam comes back, mosques will begin to lose their importance. And instead of being these centres for religious teaching, for propagating Islam and propagating goodness, instead, the only thing which will happen within them is that their numbers will increase and their splendour and their beauty will increase. What do I mean by this? The Prophet says in one of the hadiths that during that time, just before the Imam comes back, the mosques, the masjids that we will see will be beautiful and they will be flourishing, but they will be devoid and they will not have any guidance and enlightenment. Nowadays, you can see this starting to take place, unfortunately. People, when they come to the mosques, they want to come to the masjid which has the most beautiful lights, which has the most beautiful chandeliers in it. They want to come to the Husayniyah with the best sound system, the best audio system, the one that looks the most beautiful. They don't pay any attention to what actually is being taught in that mosque. They don't have any care about what spiritual lesson they're going to achieve by going to that mosque. And they don't care when they go to this mosque about getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I get the feeling that a lot of these places now, unfortunately, are becoming very superficial. They care more about the perceived vibe and atmosphere which this centre, this Husayniyah, this mosque might bring, and what they can benefit from it materially. Will someone be there to take a nice picture of them? Will they be able to get a nice video with the lighting? They care more about this than the spiritual harmony and the place of worship, the peace of worship as well. And a concept which we are very aware of, especially in the madhab of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, is the concept of taqiyya, or concealment of faith when necessary. And if we talk about taqiyya, if a person's life is in danger, for example, then it is obligatory for him to sacrifice his life or to sacrifice, his property in order to save his life. But if his religion is in danger, if his Islam is in danger, then he must sacrifice his life in order to save his religion. Taqiyya, as Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, Taqiyya is 9/10 of faith. Taqiyya is very important within the Ja'fari school of thought. However, at the end of time, religion will be sold not for the sake of preserving one's life, but it will be sold for a very cheap and miserable price. And people who were believers and mu'mins in the morning will become kuffar by the time the sun sets. And in this regard, Rasulullah says, woe to the Arabs for the evil that is approaching them. A man would be a believer in the morning and a kafir at sunset. A group of these people will sell their religion for a trivial profit, and it's a miserable amount. He goes on to say, anyone at that time who will cling steadfastly to his religion would be like the one who takes an ember for the fire or squeezes a thorn in his hands. This is worrying. This is a very worrying narration from the Holy Prophet. He says that it is going to reach such a stage where it is going to be so difficult for a person to hold on to his religion that it is as if, and it is the same concept as if a person who picks up fire and coals from a burning flame. Of course, this is going to burn a person. This is going to cause him pain. This is going to cause him difficulties. This is what the Holy Prophet says is going to be the state of believing Muslims, true mu'mins, during this time period. Another disturbing thing which will happen before the coming of Imam Sahib al-Zaman is the weakening of the foundations of people's families, of caring for people around them in the community, disregarding friendship, and altogether the feeling of coldness that human beings will have towards one another. This is one of the characteristics of the coming of the end of time. And Rasulullah described the state of affairs of those days from the emotional perspective. He says, in those days the elderly people among you will not have mercy upon the young, and the powerful people will not have any mercy upon the weak. And this, at that time, is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give permission to Imam al-Mahdi to rise up and to reappear. He also says that Yawm al-Qiyamah, the day of resurrection, will not take place until the time comes when a man out of intense poverty would look towards his own family and swear that they are his relatives to receive help from them, but they would give him nothing in return. It will reach the stage where even our own closest relatives who we thought would look after us, who would care for us because they're our family members, will turn their heads away from us out of selfishness, out of cold-heartedness, out of lack of compassion for the believers. And amongst the most vile and the most disturbing deviations with which the societies will unfortunately be troubled with prior to the coming of Imam al-Mahdi will be, as we mentioned, family deviations, but also moral deviations. And this is one of the things which I can honestly say is now upon us, the moral deviations. During this time period, it is narrated that corruption, moral corruption and moral deviation and relaxation will begin to spread uncontrollably. The disgusting animalistic acts which some people will take part in and some people will engage in, society will no longer look at these as immoral. They will no longer look at them as disgusting, reprehensible actions which should be condemned. People will begin to become accepting of these actions. It will be so widespread that there will be no one in the society who even attempts to challenge it. More so, people will not even think that there is anything wrong with it. If they don't think anything is wrong with such an action, why would they challenge it? And with this, because this is very severe, very worrying, and because it exists today, we need to look at the ahadith and the narrations that we have in order to understand and to comprehend the level of this tragedy of the loss of our Islamic values, not just Islamic values, but humanitarian, moral values as well. The Holy Prophet says, I swear to the one whose hand is the life of Muhammad that this ummah will not vanish until such a time when man would ambush a woman like a wild lion and assault her and molest her. He goes on to say, the best among the people at that time will be the ones who said, I wish that you would have hidden that action behind a veil and didn't do it in public. This is a horrifying narration. This is very difficult for a man to accept. He says that there's going to come a time period where women will be assaulted in the streets, and the most brave people in the streets will be the one who wishes it was done in public. He doesn't mind that this action is going to be done, he just doesn't want it to be seen in public. This is the level of deviation that a person's brain will have. They will have no morals left within their souls to challenge any of the disgusting actions which take place before them. This is terrifying, to think that people will not care about such actions taking place before their eyes. The concept of forbidden evil, then we can see, will be extremely diminished. People will not care about any disgusting haram actions which take place in society, and they will merely overlook it. And another one of the deviations, which is necessary for us to speak about, because it is affecting everyone in this room, and their children especially, is the sexual immorality, which is going to be faced by people. Muhammad ibn Muslim said, I went to Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and I said to him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, when will the Qa'im from among you come? When will he come back to save us? The Imam said, Imam al-Mahdi will come at a time when men would resemble women, and women would act like men, and at a time when men would go to other men to suffice themselves, and when women would go to other women to suffice themselves. This is talking about the LGBT which we see now. When men are in relationships with other men, and when men pretend that they are women. And now even in this country, if there is a man, and he says, I'm a woman, and you say to him, no, you're a man, it's illegal. This is the law in this country now. The Imam foresees this happening. He says this is the time period when al-Qa'im will come and rise. Especially when we look back and we see that this is the time period when this stuff will be happening and people will be accepting of it. People won't care about this happening in society. Now, you even have Muslims, to a lesser extent, being accepting of these actions. If you go to most churches now in this country, and you go to the Christians, and you ask them, these actions of men being with men, and women being with women, and men dressing like men, and likewise, is it acceptable? They will say yes, it's acceptable. Whereas in their own Bible, the punishment for this is something which I don't want to mention. But it's changed the society. Now, they don't care about their religion. They have let go of it. They've let go of the care that they have towards their own faith and the principles in it. All you need to do now in this country, in this society, is to look and see the prevalence of it. And it's important we speak about this. It's important that we teach our children about it as well. Because now in their schools, they are being taught that this is normal and this is okay. And we have kids now, I've heard, who are coming to their parents and they're saying, Baba, why is it that I can't be with another man? Why is it that my sister can't be with another woman? Kids are coming to their parents and saying this now. Because their teachers in school are saying that this is okay and you should accept this. And that is why it is your duty upon every single person who has a child and who is going to have a child to teach them from a young age about Islam, about what is acceptable, about what is not acceptable, and how to deal respectfully with it. We're not going to go and curse these people in front of them. We're not going to tell them that they're disgusting, horrible human beings. No. That is not the way to deal with it. And in fact, this is against our religion and this will get us into trouble. We need to teach our children respectfully that we do not agree with this. This is not our values. But if someone wants to believe in that, they can believe in it if they wish. However, we hold on to our faith. Therefore, after hearing about all of these difficulties, these moral struggles and the situations of people during the time period before the Imam comes, we need to prepare ourselves. We need to guard, as I said, our souls, our families, our children against the deviations and the immoralities which are spreading beyond control now. And we need to play our part as well in trying to limit its reach. And this means that if we see some of these laws which we disagree with being taken all the way to the final stages and being passed, that we raise our voices against it. We live in a so-called democratic country. It is our right to speak. It is our right to be vocal against these, to spread the fact that we do not accept this stuff reaching our children. Even if condemning it leads to our oppression, it's something we need to do as we hold on to the concept of enjoining good and forbidding evil. And as we know, Shahr Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, is the best for praying for the reappearance of Imam al-Zaman, especially in its nights, because of the importance and the weight that these nights hold. And Shaykh al-Kumayl, from his works, reported from the Imams that we should recite Dua Faraj in sujood, whether standing up or when we are standing down, in any position possible. And so inshallah, based on his works, based on the very words of the Imams, inshallah, we can read Dua Faraj just now and every single night. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma kun waliyaka Hujjat ibn al-Hasan صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.